the Diner with your host, Ann Eller.
First, let's just talk with Billy Garrett right here, my very special guest this afternoon. I may get everything done right here in a minute. Billy, how you doing this afternoon?
Miss Ann, I'm doing great. I hope you are.
Well, now I think I got all the buttons pushed and everything, so I think we're doing right here.
Well,
this
I'm
is
excited
like
about this. Now you can do it live on Facebook as well as the studio. So It's great. I think it's very helpful to the people. So thank you for doing that. It's very educational, very helpful.
It's very educational. It certainly is. Yes, but the good thing about it is that 5 minutes or so after we get done, it's already posted, so people can go back and listen or watch it either way.
That's fantastic. And if they have questions, they can call me at 864-554-0963. If they want further explanation, be happy to try to help them with that.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have a discussion about what went on. First off, though, Billy, I mean, you had a health scare about halfway through the session. What happened?
Yeah. Just being exhausted, working night and day and night, and then every so many years I have to get my blood pressure adjusted, blood pressure medicine adjusted, and apparently it was somewhat off. So as a result of that, my blood pressure just went out of control. And the nurse was there. She's a friend of mine. She walked in and checked on me, and she called the doctor in. And when they saw my blood pressure was over 200, so they took me out and took me to the hospital to get it dialed in.
So you're okay now.
I'm okay.
We don't have to worry about you falling out again, I hope.
No. I think they've got it balanced again. Every 10 years or so I have to get it rebalanced. So.
Well, I think there were people, I think this is when you were discussing liquor liability, and some people thought you must just not wanted to have voted on it.
No, that's not. No, I actually wanted to be there for the final debate because it's a very important debate, and I actually wanted to be there. And had I had my druthers, I'd have been there.
Right. So you're on the finance committee now.
That's right.
And this was a big move for you.
It is. It's a big move to be able to go from judiciary to finance, and I did it in just 5 years. So that's a remarkable movement, time-wise, to be able to go to finance in the first 5 years of being in the Senate. So it's very, very helpful. Helpful for our district as well.
You're right. Yeah. But I don't think you got to bring home any bacon this year, Billy, because they did away with all the earmarks.
Well, as you know, we're in the process of, on the federal side, and that's also on the state side, our DOGE attempt is to reduce the spending of government.
Well, okay, I need to know who's on the DOGE committee then. Do we have Elon Musk, or who do we have doing this job now?
No, right now we just got our leadership is very good. I will tell you that we historically, South Carolina's always had a balanced budget, and we have money in reserve funds. But we, like everybody else, we need to tighten our belt, and the state government needs to tighten its belt, and it did. And so we cut out the entire any earmarks just didn't go this year. And
how do you feel about going with a granting program, which is what I heard they're talking about next year?
Senator Peelin's talking about that, and I don't have a problem with that as long as each of our districts get a fair share. And that's an appropriate way of doing it. What they're really concerned about, as is also in DOGE, is that a lot of these nonprofits, not here though. I think all of our nonprofits are really good. Connie Maxwell and a host of others, and so those that we help are good, but there are some in some parts of the state where they're concerned that some of these people are taking some of this money and
Well, there's
using it
been
for personal
cases
gain.
where they've
Well,
never reported on what they use the money for.
They have,
Yeah.
and Senator Peeler and the leadership, his chairman of finance, and as he just said, he told us last year that he was going to stop that. So this year we went through an unbelievable process of getting up our request for earmarks. The House had to have their earmark request, and then we had to sign off as a Senate, and then we had to either add more or send our own in for compliance. And then they had a committee that looked at all of those to see whether or not we were going to do any of them and not. And then when we decided to cut the tax rate to a flat 6% as opposed to the
Well, that has not passed yet.
I
Has not
understand,
passed yet,
but
right?
we're heading there. In order to do that, you had to cut somewhere, and so our commitment, the Republican Party's commitment to cutting out income tax, is very strong, and we intend to make that happen. So that's going to happen. I mean, we're going to continue to move towards no income tax in South Carolina to make us competitive with some of our other states.
Are we not competitive already? Do we not have enough businesses coming in here?
Well, apparently not.
Says who?
we're saying.
That's what I want to know. Says who?
Well, similar to what Mr. Trump's trying to do is trying to generate business for America. He's trying to bring all that back to America. He wants South Carolina and all our states to have all of these industries back in America. And the theory behind it is if we have all of these businesses, all of these manufacturing companies making all this money and we're taxing it, then hopefully that will be the method when you buy a product. That's the fairest tax there is. If you got the money to buy something, you buy it and you pay for it. And then you pay the tax on it on the front end. And at some point in time, I hope we're to the point where we can start working on property taxes, especially as to seniors. And, we're already taking care of the seniors, the disabled veterans. 100% disabled veterans. We're taking care of those folks as it relates to tax. So I'm just hoping at some point we can do away completely with the income tax. And we got to do it slow. And, the idea originally was to do it 0.25% a year, which was what was originally thought about. But with this idea of DOGE and this idea of trying to cut, trying to reduce the size of government, I mean, this is where the Republican Party is going, and we're going to have to tighten our belts. Everybody's going to have to tighten their belts in government, and that's what we're doing.
Well, how about the fact that it's going to cost those on the lower end more?
Well, that's why it didn't pass. I mean, and I was concerned. The original bill was like 60% of the people would have had to pay.
Right.
It was small, but it was a lot of people having to pay it. And they're also saying that a lot of people aren't paying taxes, period.
Right.
So there's some concern about that, and it's not fair for the other parts that are paying the taxes not to be able to have some relief from everybody who should be paying taxes. So there was some concern there. The other version, the latest version, was 27% would have to pay more. Well, that's not, in my opinion, a tax cut. If people,
Right.
if people are going to have to pay more, then it's not a tax cut. But to do away with it altogether, you're going to have to do away with it altogether. So I think when they sat down and they looked and studied the numbers, they were of the opinion that just wasn't going to work. So we've got more work to do. Look, we've got a fellow by the name of Sean Bennett who's attempting to help us across the board. He's our senator that's into the taxing issues, and we're trying to get him to come up with a comprehensive plan that he's been working on for years. Since I've been in the Senate, he's been working on a comprehensive plan.
Where's he from?
Bennettsville.
Bennettsville.
Yeah. He's very good, and he's working on it, and I'm hoping we get to the point where we can do away with income tax completely. The other part of it is, right now, Ann, a lot of people get all these exemptions,
Right.
this exemption, that exemption.
From their federal tax,
Both
taxes.
the state, both and the federal and the state. There's also state exemptions. So it's imperative that when we do it fairly across the board, give people enough notice so they can adjust their incomes and their monies appropriately, but be taxed at a fair rate, and then none at all. So in order
How
to
long
transition,
that's going to take, though? That could take 5 or 6 years.
probably closer to 10 at the end of the day. I mean, he was going to go, Senator Peeler was going to go 0.25 point a year, and that was his original goal. And then the House came out with what they came out with, which was astronomical in cutting the taxes. And then I think because of the DOGE movement, agreed that we need to tighten our belts, and so I don't know what that means next year for earmarks. And if they go through a grant program, that's excellent. That suits me fine. They should do that anyway, but I want to make sure that each district gets its fair share based on the population.
Well, basically, what we usually see in situations like this is the bigger areas, Greenville, Charleston, the beach, the coast, they get more money than districts like Greenwood gets.
They do, because there's more people there. The state is receiving more money from them as well. So I mean, it's a two-edged sword. We're receiving a lot more money from them than, say, from Greenwood, or say from even McCormick, which is the poorest county in the state.
So what? So you're not looking at an increase in a sales tax, then? Is that
not
correct?
yet? No, not yet.
Wait a minute. No. You heard that, folks? Not yet.
Well, I mean, if you do away with the income tax, you're going to have to adjust somewhere, and the fairest tax is the sales tax, and that's what Florida's done. Florida's got a combination of property tax and sales tax, and they don't have an income tax, and
right.
So we need to move towards that model over time. But again, if we can get South Carolina booming to the point where we have tremendous manufacture here, where we're selling products all over the world, we'll be in a position then of having sufficient taxes on sales tax to pay the government, for government, local and state.
Mm. Well, but then there is another how are the boat tax? This is a conversation about reducing the boat tax,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I mean we're the highest. We're one of the highest taxed boat people. And of course, my communities, all of mine are
water people.
Water people. We got Greenwood, and of course got Lake Murray, and then the Saluda River and the upper Lake Murray. And so those people are absolutely demanding that we reduce it, because it's too high. And so I'm in favor of us taking the steps to reduce it. But here's the problem. For instance, I get a call from the fellow down in the chairman of Saluda, and he says, "Billy, if you do that, it's going to cost us $400,000." I said, "Well, we're all having to tighten up." And he said, "You don't understand. I don't have $400,000 of extra business, and Saluda has very few businesses.
Right.
So other than raising taxes, how am I going to pay for it?" So again, it didn't pass this year, but that, like all other taxes, have to be looked at, holistically, from a macro point as well as a micro point, and then come to a solution that's good for the people. But regardless of all that, if you don't reduce the size of government and
Correct.
you continue to let it grow, and obviously taxes are going to increase, they have to.
Right.
So we got to do it one way or the other.
Well, aren't there some departments you can just cut out down there? I mean, come on, Billy. Let's just cut out some departments.
Well, we did. I mean, we busted up DHEC.
Well, but you didn't really do that. You consolidated them into two separate groups. So,
well,
right?
Actually, there's three groups now.
Three,
yeah.
right.
But the economies of scale and the way we're working that is going to be better for the people of South Carolina. I mean, you had one agency that dealt with all your environmental issues altogether, and so that Department of Environmental Services will be by itself, and then we divided up the other part, between mental health issues, special needs, that kind of thing, and then the Department of Health, and so we've divided those up. And I think the economies of scale that will happen from that, I think, will be cost effective.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Overall, I think we'll have better results, and it'll be cost effective.
Well, one of the issues that is a hot button issue, in fact, tonight, while the Republican meeting is going on over there at the YMCA,
right.
is the school districts are very short money, and they, right here in Greenwood, I think we were $1 million. Now I think y'all came up with $225,000, and so this will reduce some, but it does not reduce it all. And all of these school districts are saying, "How are we going to make it?" Now, I understand you're going to tell me it's from this proviso from back in 2023.
Right.
But how can the school districts make this up? Or are they just supposed to start cutting departments and getting rid of teachers? I mean, what's the answer, Billy?
Well, the answer is this formula was decided on by the General Assembly in 23.
Right.
So this new formula has been in place, and I hope that most of our schools have been working towards making sure that.
Yeah, I guess that's why Greenville's $12 million short.
Well, again, we're all going to have to tighten our belts. I mean, it's just one of those situations where we're going to have to tighten our belt. I don't think the General Assembly is going to let anybody go without. So there's not going to be a circumstance like that, but we're all going to have to tighten our belt. And listen, across the board, we didn't get near. I mean, I need $600,000 over there at the Otis department, for our special projects that are going on over there. I had my own earmarks, by the way, that I intended to make available to these special industries. So we're just all going to have to take a haircut for a little while until we get this figured out. So,
but I mean, this is the budget coming up for this coming
that's
year.
Right. That's
and
this budget year. Yeah.
And this is, I've gotten several questions. Our shortfall appears now to be $3.5 million. 96 will have roughly $1 million. Mm-hmm. Does he think when the committees from both House and Senate get together to hammer out the final budget that this can be fixed?
It can be, and I'm hoping this has been my advice and counsel to them. Senator Hembry, who's chairman of education, and I had a conversation about this. When I got called from Greenwood, I immediately called him. He's in charge of education. He's the education chairman in South Carolina. I said, this is, we got to do something. We got to help these folks. And he promised me that we would look into it at the conference and do everything that we could. But he also made the comment to me, he said, Billy, this has been in place since 23. I'm not sure why people haven't recognized that and started making some cuts. So again, I'm just telling you what he reported to me, and so I think we're all just going to have to work it as best we can. Both sides are going to walk away from and say pew probably, and it's probably a pretty good deal at the end of the day. They're going to cut the government is going to try to cut more than the schools want, and the schools are going to have to take a little less than they wanted to take before. But again, it's shocking to everybody. When I got the call, I immediately called them and told them we got to work on this, and they promised me they would. And so I can't help but believe they recognize that. I mean, our first obligation in South Carolina under our Constitution is to education. So
exactly.
I'm comfortable that that's going to be resolved. I'm a little surprised, though, that a lot more work wasn't done in the last 2 years, 24 and 25, to make sure that those budgets were a little tighter or whatever
I think
it was.
Part of the problem was they had funding from, I don't remember whether it was from the federal government that was masking some of this.
Okay.
I do think that's what I've understood.
And
by
the
this.
federal government went back and cut it.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, if it's not there, it's not there. And we're going to keep a balanced budget in South Carolina, and we're going to keep our reserve funds for the rainy day in the worst case scenario. So again, it's competing interest, it's priority interests for the monies that are available. And again, we didn't take any earmarks this year, so we've given it all. We've given it all 100% towards this push. Is this the best year to cut it to 6%? Maybe not. And maybe we would have been better suited going 0.25%. But our leadership has made a promise that we're going to do away with income tax in South Carolina, and I think that's going to happen.
Right. Another question that came in is, will charter schools and schools that receive vouchers be held to the same accountability standards as public schools?
Yes, both as to accounting as well as to performance. There will be testing and that kind of thing. I mean, we've got this, the Supreme Court came in and said that they couldn't take any money for those schools out of the general fund, and so now they've got it, the fund program with funding available through the general fund or the education lottery. And basically what they said, we must restore the school choice program signed into law nearly 2 years ago. Education scholarship empower low-income families throughout the state with a choice to send their children to school best suited to meet their needs. Again, this is needs-based and it's choice. And so, again, these are promises that the party has made to the people of South Carolina, and we're working to try to accomplish that. But, we're only talking about 10,000 students in 25 to 26 and 15,000 or more for the school year 2026-27. So,
do you think that's fair?
What's
That
that?
only do that many students.
Well,
That's
again,
my question.
And we're starting off small. It's just like those cuts, Again, it's a balance is what we're trying to do. We're trying to accomplish a balance, trying to meet some of the needs of those parents. I mean, we're 48th in education. Does that mean we got bad teachers? No, we got great teachers. A lot of our teachers are underpaid. A lot of our teachers work day and night. They take money out of their own pockets. And part of this budget does, though, fund the teachers. It gives them another $1,500 a year raise. So, I mean, we were behind before, so we're trying to get up to a certain level so a beginning teacher can make a decent wage and be able to sustain themselves and their families and take care of their children, So, I mean, and the amount is only $7,500 per student, So it's not like it's a tremendous, a tremendous amount out of the total budget. That's
Right.
what I'm saying. Okay.
And somebody asked, the bill they passed this week to let teachers know how much they're going to make when they sign their contract, and the legislation does not pass a bill until after those contracts go out. How do we do this? I mean, the timing of things is what is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers, I mean, they have to send out contracts before they actually have a budget to know how much they're going to get.
It's just the way it's always been, and should it be done
Well, I
differently?
mean, that's
Probably.
Doge. Come on, let's fix this then. That's Doge problem here.
No, you don't want to hear Doge on that. You don't want to hear Doge on that. Let me just say this. They know that they are, especially beginning teachers, are going to get increases until we reach the average, the southeastern average for beginning teachers. So that's our first. We got to get there first. We hadn't even got there yet. Mm-hmm. So we got to get there first.
We're a lot closer than we were, though, right?
And
absolutely.
we've every year I've been there, we've given a raise to try to get us up to that point. When we started, we were in real bad shape as far as I'm concerned, and I think we're making progress there. Okay. The other thing I want y'all to be aware of too is when I found out that I talked to you about this, I found out that there were 187 schools that did not have
resource officers.
I mean, that was shocking to me because they had told me we had 100%. So when I went in and I looked at it, I found out that's not the case at all. I went in and talked to the leadership and said, look, I've told the people that we've got them in every school.
Did we not have them in every school in Greenwood?
Yeah, we have them in Greenwood, but I'm just talking about across
the state.
Across the state. Mm-hmm. And I just said we've got to meet that requirement. So it's not correct for us to say it and not do it. So, my position is promises made, promises kept. We got to do what we say we're going to do, and this budget includes that. Now again, you got priorities, man. Yeah, you got 100 and some odd schools that are going to have a resource officer. Well, 40, 50, whatever. They have to get paid, but you can't do it all. But you got to do as much as you can. I think our children's safety is as important as their learning.
Right.
So we have to balance those things. So that was a decision that was made that money will go towards that purpose.
Don't you all guys have a lot of extra money sitting around down there? I understand you have some pretty healthy fund balances down there.
We got some very nice fund balances in our reserve funds and in our rainy day funds, and that's why we're so strong. We're strong with our budget. And up until recently, we've been very AAA rated.
Which brings us to another topic about Curtis Loftus and the treasurer. The Senate voted to remove him. I thought it was interesting. The House did not take that up.
That's right, and that effectively creates a censure. And that's what happened, believe it or not. In 1875, there was a previous treasurer who went before the Senate. The Senate voted to oust him, and the House didn't. Okay? And so it's basically a censure.
How do you consider it's a censure?
Well,
because, he's still in office. He didn't remove him from office.
It's a censure is that, you keep doing that, you're liable to not get elected again, or you're liable to not be allowed to serve again. So, it is what it is. It's business. Curtis is has been a great treasurer. Everybody likes him. He's well liked, well loved, well respected. But look, we got a $1.8 billion problem.
Well, supposedly we didn't have a problem.
Well, we did, as far as the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, when it's trying to rate South Carolina, who said they had $1.8 billion that they didn't, and
That's called overstatement a little bit. Yeah, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Well, it's going to cost us probably somewhere between, I don't know, $8 to $15 million.
Is it going to affect our credit rating?
Yeah, I mean that's the concern. So that was another reason that the Senate had to act in such a way is to make the SEC understand that we take this very seriously. That this, the balancing of our budget and then the balancing of our monies through the Comptroller General.
It's also cost a lot of money to do all this accounting, go back, and now they have the Inspector General doing a report, I guess. Yes,
it was like $5 million, and I think they spent $3 million of it, and then there's $2 million left that they've got to do a future. So we're trying to lay all these foundations so the SEC can see that we take it seriously. We're not going to have it happen again, and we'll take care of it. We'll make sure that it doesn't happen again. But no money got lost as far as we know.
Right.
Okay, so hopefully that's the case when all of it's said and done. But it's a horrible, horrible accounting error that should have been addressed. And my information is they knew about the beginning of it, of $67 million in 2016. So, again, it is what it is. The House decided not to do it. But in effect, it ends up being a censure, and hopefully that'll make sure that doesn't happen again.
I see. Now, a couple of questions have come in about how we're going to raise revenue when you keep cutting. One, and of course, our cities and our counties, how they have money besides the taxes that they take in, keeping our taxes relatively low. But
and they're not low, by the way. But go ahead.
Our property taxes?
No, they're not low.
Okay. Well, I was just throwing that out there.
I got
but
you.
anyways,
I got you.
How about what other ways could we generate revenue? Some of the questions that have come in as possibility is not necessarily legalizing marijuana, but the gambling aspect and possibly sports betting. All of these things do actually raise funds. And I know we don't want that kind of stuff in our state, but how do we pay for stuff if we're going to go to zero tax? Maybe we increase the sales tax, but how do our cities, our counties, et cetera, the boat tax we're talking about doing? We're talking about doing away with a lot of things that have been standard ways for raising revenue.
And that's the thing, these other states, Tennessee around us, North Carolina, Florida, have been able to cut their income tax completely out. And the way they've done it, they've made adjustments. But we've got to consider that we've got to increase our manufacturing in South Carolina substantially and pull some of those jobs that are going to China. They need to be right here in South Carolina, especially like BMW, for instance. A lot of the parts are made elsewhere. We need to make every one of those parts for those BMW cars in South Carolina. Scout Motors, we need to build every one of those parts for Scout Motors here in South Carolina. We need to set up our own pharmaceutical companies that are building our own medicines right here in South Carolina. We also passed the energy bill. We're going to be looking at these small nuclear reactors. It's something that you and I talked about on the last occasion,
right?
And they can use their balance sheets. These businesses can use their balance sheets along with the government help and the government subsidies to be able to create this new energy. And once this new energy, it takes care of those centers, that need it. And then if they have excess above and beyond that, they can sell it back to the utilities to add to our infrastructure. South Carolina needs to have absolutely 100% energy efficiency, and it needs to have energy maintenance and dominance. We don't need to rely upon anybody else for our energy. And I know we're interconnected, but if we ever got into a real bad situation, I do not under any circumstances want South Carolina to ever be in a brownout situation like they have in California or Los Angeles or those places. I mean, we just don't even need to think about that. So we need to be thinking about what kind of energy structure do we need with all these people coming to South Carolina?
Correct.
In 2050. Right now, we need to be thinking about what do we need in 2050 instead of thinking about what do we need in 2026 or 27.
Well, actually, another part of that is really something that was, I think, on the radar a few years ago that's not talked about much anymore, is the hardening of our grid.
Yeah, well, that's
I mean,
part of it.
That is.
Cybersecurity is part of the hardening of the grid, and I've got statements from both Duke Power representatives, Theo Lane, as well as Tiger, who is their liaison between them, Duke, and the government, as well as all of these others, Dominion Energy, and they've all told us that, look, we're gonna have the strongest grid possible that we can possibly have, and the money that we're talking about, we're going to improve our grid. A lot of it in these towns and whatnot. It'd be great if we build the new ones. All of that stuff goes underground instead of being up where trees can take it out and that kind of thing. So we don't go through another Helen. And also we also had to spend a good bit of money and to try to help with the Helene. A lot of that money had to be paid back to the counties because the counties are going to be without that money. So, again, this year we had to dip into that to be able to help, with that. So we have a lot of needs out there and a limited amount of money. And
that's why maybe sports betting is a good idea.
Well, if you want to go into sports betting, have at it.
I don't want to go into sports betting, but I don't
listen. The current bill that they're talking about now only gives South Carolina 5%.
That's the ones wasn't that the one for the horse betting?
Yeah.
This is sports. This is different type of sports betting. I think is what this person is, not the horse,
I don't
because
know.
the horses. That's a whole different category.
Listen, if people want to, look, I don't countenance myself. I've seen the destruction on video poker, for instance, what it did to families in Greenwood. I represented over 10 or 20 families just devastated, where the wives would go out and spend their entire retirement and spend their children's education funds because they were hooked on it. And then once they got into it deep enough, then they felt like they had to go win in order to try to get it back. And before it was all said and done, the husbands come home and find out that all the money's been spent. And the same way with wives. The wives found out that the husbands have spent everything that they got. Unfortunately, it has a lot of negative impacts and on the community quality of life, where people just fall prey to it. And
do you think it's different, the sports betting, whether you're doing it on your phone, on TV, watching a game or something? Do you think that's different than what we experienced with video poker?
And it may be, okay. Again, gambling.
I don't know.
Where does it stop, Ann? We're talking about putting a casino in South Carolina.
What do you think about that?
Well, if we want to make a public policy that we're going to become, Las Vegas or something like that, then if the public policy, if the people want that, then certainly they can vote for that, And if the majority of people in Greenwood come to me and tell me that's what they want me to do, then I'm going to do it. But I can assure you that I'm going to try to counsel them that that's not in our best interest long term to put that kind of thing in here. Most of that 95% of that money is going to go away from South Carolina, and in that bare mutual betting. Only 6% and 5% is going to come back and be used for grants or whatever. The other 1% is for administration of the program. And I've said, look, we'd be better off, wouldn't we? Just, helping fund the industry, if we're able to, fund that industry and try to help that industry along. Because it's a traditional historic South Carolina, brand, is to have our horse racing and that kind of thing all the way from Aiken and and all the various places that we've had that. So, I'm in favor of the industry. I want to help the industry. I'm not sure that that's the way to go. But some places are going to that. Let me say that. So again, it's something that will be studied. It's something that will be debated.
Right.
And I actually get to sit on the subcommittee on the pari-mutuel betting on the horse racing there in Aiken, what they're trying to do. But I've studied it, and I'm studying it, and I continue to study it. If they were giving us like 50% or 60%, I've also said, and I've made this real clear, I'm not in favor of it, but if we're going to do it, let's make sure we get top dollar,
You sound like a Trump man.
Well, you got to make a deal.
That's right. The art of the deal, right?
If you're going to make a deal, make a good one for us if you're going to do it. Again, I think the downsides are far greater. Maybe it was just 20 families, but, those people had extended families. Those people had children. Those people
sure,
had grandchildren.
Sure. I mean,
so
it's
it
just,
can
I
be
guess,
devastating.
Are we calling apples to apples? That's the question in that, and that's the question.
And the other
I think.
thing is, I represented a good many of those people that actually owned those stores.
Right.
And for them, it was a economic boom. It was great.
Right.
For them, and they were able to build more stores and build more small businesses and fund them, and all that was great. But again, it was pretty devastating to some of those families in our community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I wonder is, how do you make a decision on what way you will vote on something? I think that we all sit here and we watch all this stuff, but sometimes we don't really know whether our opinions are being taken in. Of course, I know mine are, but I mean, other people.
Yours for sure, Miss Ann. Again, I've told you this before. The way I look at first, is it biblical? What they're asking us to do. Do I feel comfortable with it spiritually and morally? And then the second question is, does it meet our Constitution? And then does it meet the state constitution? And then does it meet our Republican platform? That's what I was elected on. So those are the first four questions that I ask about anything. Then I want to know whether or not the majority of people in my district are in favor of it or against it. If they're in favor of it, I'm going to vote for it.
Even if you might feel that it's not a good vote.
It's not this job belongs to the people. I'm doing what the people want to do.
How do you contact the people? How do you know how the people feel?
And I get hundreds of calls and texts and communications almost every day. A lot of people call, and we got people helping us answer the phone. If I can't get to it until I can get to it, and then I'll try to respond to it. And most of it's in writing. So we tell them where we're at, and we want to know where they're at.
Well, sure. I think that's important. How did you feel about what happened on liquor liability?
It's great. I mean, they adopted what I thought was the appropriate way to approach it, the House approach, where they could reduce liability amounts that you had to pay based upon your going in and doing all the things you needed to do to make it safer, to help people. And even people after 12, from 12 to 4, I think they even have to have now some type of verification of age,
right?
Which is good, which they should have had all along. But again, there are a host of these things, and also it helps the other folks. The BMWs. VFWs. I'm sorry.
VFWs, not BMW. Okay.
VFWs. Help those folks. Limit it to 300,000 because they're going to close up at 5 or 6 or whatever. They're going to have their little events.
Nonprofit. Right?
Yeah, they're nonprofits and that kind of thing. So again, I think it was a hard.
Did it go far enough? Did it go far enough for you?
I don't think it'll go far enough until I can see where there is actually a reduction in premiums. And as you know, I've been an advocate for. I don't mind them cutting the requirements or the coverage.
Well, it looks like the Senate and the House gave up more, and the insurance companies didn't give up a thing.
Well, the insurance companies did. I can assure you, they didn't give up a thing. You can count on that. And it'd be interesting to see. What I'd like to do is to have every one of the bar owners in our community and in District 10, every one of them, I'd love for them to go ahead and take out their bill right now and tack it up on their wall somewhere. And then let's look at it in 2 years and see whether or not it had the effect it was supposed to have, i.e. reducing those premiums. If it did, then, hey, we did good. But if it didn't, we didn't, and we got to do more, okay? It's just that simple. Because if we're not going to cut the rates, what's the whole purpose of the thing?
Correct.
Right? So again, that's where I was at the beginning of that debate, and that's where I'm at right now.
Do you were your insurance companies threatening you to the fact that they just wouldn't write any of that insurance, but they wanted to keep writing any of the other good, quote, good profitable insurances?
One of the arguments was that if they're going to write insurance in South Carolina, they need to write all insurance, especially that's mandated by state law.
Right.
You can't cherry pick and, hey, all I want to do is write life insurance. I don't want to write anything but life insurance.
Right.
That's all I want to write. If you're gonna write a certain quantity of commercial liability insurance, then you should be required to do it all. I mean, you saw what happened in Florida, didn't you? You saw where all of a sudden there was a hurricane coming, and then those insurance companies started dropping those insurance policy. Same thing, in California. We don't need that in South Carolina. Look, bottom line is most people in South Carolina have had insurance coverages on their house. I've had mine for 40 plus years, and I've never made a claim.
Right.
And I paid it faithfully every year. And that's the way they make money. Okay? And that's, look.
What'd you tell me they made $88 billion last year?
That's what the total insurance industry made last year. And that's fine. Listen, I'm excited about us all making money. I want the insurance companies to make money. I'm a capitalist. Look, I don't want small businesses to be taken advantage of either. You
Right.
know? I want to make sure that they get their fair share and they get proper coverage for the amount of money they pay. And I'd love to see a reduction in rates because that's what we've been talking about.
Well, and then at one point it actually included car insurance there. I know that you got that out of it. But
there was a Senate debate on that, Ann, because here's the problem there is that automobile insurance, if you've got $25,000 minimum is what you're required to have, and $50,000 per accident, okay? The problem with that is that if you go out here and hit a $60,000 car, and those poor people on the other side, if they don't have some other insurance to protect them, I mean, you're not able to cover your responsibility. So
I think I've heard something where car sellers, some of these dealerships, are adding a second insurance policy to cover the cars. I think.
Well, I'm sure they do if they're selling them on time, or
Right.
because they take off with a $60,000 vehicle, okay, and there's only coverage if somebody hits them. And there's $25,000. That's all that's there. Who's going to make up that $35,000 difference? Ann?
Right, exactly.
So if they don't have sufficient insurance on the other side, extra insurance, or underinsured motorist coverage, or whatever you want to call it, uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, if you don't have that on these cars, you may very well not get your car paid for, unrelated to the injury that people might suffer.
Correct.
There's only $25,000 there. The problem that might get you through one or two emergency room visits, maybe
That's
not.
about it, right? Now, what about one of the things that I think was taken up, I don't think y'all did anything with it, was allowing municipalities to use credit unions as opposed to just standard banks. Where are we at on that, and why would that be an issue?
Again, that did go through banking and the banking subcommittee. I saw that bill, and it was not ready. There's too many federal regulations, state regulations that all have to be worked out before that can get done in the way it was asked for. Okay, so there was a lot of people for it, and there were a lot of people against it. And until we get some consensus on the fairness of it across the board, this is a 2-year session. It came up, and then it went back to committee. So there's more work that's got to be done on that. So.
Well, it just seems to make sense. It would keep more money in your communities.
Anything that keeps more money in our communities, anything that cuts taxes, I'm looking at it. Okay.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, listen. Is there something you would like to discuss that we haven't discussed in this very fast-paced go session here today?
There's a few things that I would like to talk about. And that is some of the bills that we did pass. We got combating AI, child abuse, where people are morphing children and that kind of thing with the AI, and then putting it out on the internet. It's just awful, some of the things. So we made that a 10-year felony in South Carolina. And then as it relates to fentanyl-induced murder, now in South Carolina, you can be charged with murder, 20 years. If in the event you go out, and then a guilty person can be in prison up to 30 years.
Good.
If they turn around and my bill, I've got another bill out there, Senator Adams and I, where we're trying to make every scheduled drug, if it's on the schedule and you give it to somebody and it kills them, then you get the same treatment. So this idea of giving buddies drugs at a party or something like that, you might want to think about that again. The mental health restructuring was very important as far as I'm concerned. I think we've had a split where a lot of people who with mental health issues, drug addiction issues, host of others, weren't getting treated correctly. And this new DOTIS, DDSN, and DMH, Department of Mental Health, and Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, in my estimation, is going to be one of the best pieces of legislation we did this year.
What's it going to do? What's it actually going to do?
It's going to put those three agencies together.
Okay.
Each one's going to have its own operative function, but we're going to have, hopefully at the end of the day, we'll have a head of each one of those, but then one head over all three. Okay? And then, as you know, the Senate refused to confirm Dr. Simmer.
Right.
Because of all the problems with COVID and the fact that he's not even done any studies whatsoever to go out and try to find out the people that took the COVID.
But he's still there.
He's still there because the governor would have to, it will allow him to stay over. We just didn't confirm him, and now it's in the governor's hands as to whether or not he stays or not.
But how well, I don't think we probably have time to discuss it, but mental health, I think, is a big issue. And so I am just curious, are we going to have more mental health care facilities? Are we, is there anything along that line? Or are you just saying, well, we're referring everybody to this agency?
No, we're also we're doing a lot of things, Ann. We're getting regional facilities set up to where all three of those agencies can be working together. We're also coming up with a common intake form to make sure that everybody's intake aligns with the other agencies, to make sure that way everybody's getting the full treatment that they need from one of the three agencies, or all three, in some cases all three. And they'll be using the same intake, so they'll all be on the same page with this one individual, which has never happened before, and I'm excited about that for mental health in South Carolina. The energy reform is big, again, is that we're going to be able to partner to construct a new generation facility in Colleton County. Did you see today where the governor has contacted Trump to be able to open up those two VC nuclear plants that got stopped? Yeah, right. He's trying his best to get that done. And this bill requires a plan to advance development of nuclear generation smaller modular reactors, something you and I had talked about.
Absolutely.
So we're able to get that in the bill. We talked about that, and then the tax relief is just, we increased a teacher's pay from $47,000 to $48,500, fully funds school resource officers program, provides for law enforcement retention. We provided an additional $100 million for bridge repairs. Our bridges are in pretty bad shape.
Finally got that bridge, and it's quite nice over there by Airport Road. It was early, I think, in getting finished.
I can promise you that any bridge, I've got one other bridge that's out that they promised me they'll get to it and get it done as soon as possible. And then we allocated $200 million for the Hurricane Helene disaster relief. So, and then us doing away with those, as far as I'm concerned, our DOGE efforts to do away with earmarks are tremendous. Failure to stop for a blue light, where people are getting killed running from blue lights and that kind of thing. We've added that one up. Bodily injury up to 15 years. Death, if death results, up to 30 years. And we also increased the standard practice increased from 5 to 10 years maximum imprisonment for just running where nobody got hurt. Right. Just the fact that you've endangered all those folks. The organized retail crime bill, which was very good, where people are getting together, going in and stealing, and they're fencing it and selling it. So, those are tremendous. And let me just tell you about the ones that we're working on. We got my adoption bill through the Senate. It's going to the House now, so hopefully next year.
That has to do with who's on first for adoption of a child when it's being given up.
That's right.
Yes.
And it streamlines it, makes it faster, makes it quicker, makes it less expensive, okay? Again, we're trying to DOGE everything. So adoption is one of the areas that we need to work on. If a child stays in foster care for more than 2 years, it's almost impossible to get them adopted out. We're working on a DUI reform bill that really is needed. We're like 48th, 49th again with DUI deaths in South Carolina. Right. So, again, we got to work on that. The DEI bill, making it applicable to the entire state agency, it passed the House. It didn't pass the Senate because it didn't get over to us in time. So the DEI bill, diversity, equity, inclusion, will be, we're going to have a very comprehensive attack on that. And
but that'll have to come up in January.
That'll come up in the next term. We're going to continue to work on the DOGE bill and we're going to have to work here and there again. The conference on the schools, all these things we've got to do. My chaplaincy bill, I've been told that it will come up next year, and maybe we can get it through next year. And then the comprehensive bill addressing the other scheduled drugs for death. I mean, those are things that we're going to work on next year that I'm excited about while we continue to do Doge, while we continue to reduce income taxes. So.
Well, that's good. Now, so you are saying, I think, somewhere in this conversation, because I know we have a lot of people listening about that, is that something is going to happen on our school budgets for this year, and that'll be taken up while you are doing budget reconciliation.
Yeah, we're still a ways away from that. I'm told that hopefully that'll be resolved by May 28th.
Okay.
And we're going to give the governor some time to veto and see whether or not he vetoes. He's indicated today he had nothing to veto. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully he'll sign the bills that we need for him to sign.
So now you can go ahead and add a lot of stuff in since he's told you he didn't have anything to veto, right?
Well, I don't think it's like that. I tell you, right, this year has been a tight year, and especially if you're going to cut that kind of money out of our budget generally, that's over $200 million.
Yeah, and then you guys asked for a $1,500 a month increase.
No.
Yes, to your in-district spending.
And I've never voted for a pay increase ever. And there is a bill out there that will add an additional in-district expense amount, especially this year when they cut out all of the earmarks. I've got 3 separate areas that I'm responsible for. The House gets $1,000. We get $1,000 for 3 times the number of people to try to take care of them. They actually charge us. I have to pay taxes on that $1,000. So actually, it comes to be $700 something. That money goes into an in-district spending account, as I told you before. Mm-hmm. I don't get that money. Although
you could.
I could, but I made
FYI.
I made a commitment to Greenwood that I wouldn't do that, and every dollar that I get goes into that account, and then it's spent for a host of things, sponsoring various nonprofit, benefit plans or whatever, for the people. It goes to taking care of all the various awards.
You can't really substitute that for the earmarks thing.
I know, there's nowhere near enough.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you, this is all I got.
Right.
That's all we got. I mean, again, we're having to be austere as well. And so, they haven't done that. They haven't increased that since the 90s.
1995.
Whatever. And
yes.
So if they want to, that's fine. I don't see a problem with it. Especially if you're like me and you account for every dime of it, and you give it back to the people.
Unfortunately, not everybody does account for every dime of it.
I can't help what others do. I can only do what Mr. McCravey and I have done it, and that's been our policy when I first got in. He and I discussed that, and he said that's what he was doing, and I felt like that was appropriate. I remember a number of years ago in Greenwood where some of our people were spending some in-district money and they didn't like it.
That was county employees.
County council back in the day. And I just remembered that. And so the people expect us, the money that we get, we it's our responsibility to put it back. If they call it in-district, I think that's what they mean. And it doesn't mean you personal. So, I account for all mine and I do that. So, again, the cost of living since then, and the Senate needs to be higher than the House anyway. We have 3 times the people, so all the awards that we try to get out to people, all these school teachers of the year, and I've got 3 counties instead of 1. There's just a fire departments that you're trying to award, police departments you're trying to award, and just the community as a whole, we have 3 times more.
So what you're saying is the Senate should have more than the House, anyways.
Yeah, just based on percentage, just based on the numbers.
Okay.
And so whether they do it in the House or not, or do it in the Senate, it doesn't matter. I've been doing it and getting by with it as best I can in the last 5 years now, and. The Senate pay is $10,500. We don't make a dime more than that, and that hardly covers our gas, to be honest.
Yeah, but you get paid 67 cents a mile, and you get $202 per diem.
Try to buy a set of tires with that. that you're going to run out. Going
Oh,
back.
I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
I'm just. All I'm telling you is, at the end of the day, it's almost like the teachers. They're picking out of their pockets to be able to pay to keep going,
Right.
and that's fine. That's just part of it.
Well, it's an interesting discussion, because there is a lot of discussion about should we be paying legislatures more. And my position is, Billy, you could not have common everyday people that have regular jobs doing this job because of the way the House and the Senate are set up with their session. Where can somebody get off work for 4 months, 4 days, 3 or 4 days a week?
You might as well say 6 months in toto.
Well, okay, but where does a regular job person, an hourly or salaried person, get that option? Not very often.
Other than a teacher, who gets several months off a year. I mean,
but not during the springtime, or
right.
not January through
when they're
May.
So you don't get many teachers, right? Because they're working.
Exactly.
Again, it's not designed to pay a lot of money, and that's fine. That's what it ought to be.
Right.
Just like you said, those folks need to be able. There's a lot of people. I remember Senator Scott pulling me aside when I first got there, and he said, "If you can do anything to help us get a raise, try to help us get a raise." He said, "I make like $40,000 a year at my job, and I need more." He died of a heart attack 2 years ago, and he was a great senator. But he asked me to try to help with that if it ever came up. And I told him then that I recognize that if we don't get everybody from every class of people into the Senate, that a lot of those issues will never get raised.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
So, I mean, your point's well taken. And that's what I told him. And I told him I'd do that. Now, he's gone, but I remember it came to my mind when I stood there and voted on that thing.
Right.
What he said, and it is what it is.
Exactly. Well, I did have one last question come in. I don't know if you even want to try to tackle it, but somebody just asked, who will be our next governor?
Wow, isn't that an interesting one? Well, I tell you, you've got Alan Wilson, who is probably the favorite, and then you got Pamela Abbott, who's probably close to him, maybe in some corners even more. Mm-hmm. And then if Nancy Mace decides to run,
that's a no-go. Come on, that's a no-go.
I'm just telling you. And then, of course, Josh Kimbrell out of Greenwood is running. Mm-hmm. At least he says he is. And so that's the lineup so far. But we don't know who's going to run at the end of the day. We don't know. And there may be a dark horse or somebody like that come in. I mean, South Carolina is unique about. And then you've got most of the governors have come out of Edgefields.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
So you don't know. So that's as good an answer as I can give you right now. So.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. Well, listen, Senator Billy Garrett has been with us this afternoon. I haven't taken many questions because I had so many questions going into this afternoon. Billy, you're going to have to come back and let us chew the fat some more.
I'll do that. Be happy to do that. And again, my number is 864-554-0963, and I'll be happy to try to answer any of your questions if they didn't get answered. Be happy to do that for you. If you'll text them to me, I'll try to answer them for you, okay?
You going on any trips?
Not yet. My children, my grandchildren have to finish school first. And once they finish school, then we're probably looking forward to the first week in June if everything lines up correct.
The stars align?
Yeah, if everything aligns, I'm really looking forward. We got an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. Sherry Biggs is going to let us go up there and check out the sights and sounds and what goes on in Washington, D.C. And for some, that might not be exciting, but for
we're going to be going up there and broadcasting from her office and everything.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Yeah.
So we're excited about it. She's real open and real helpful to us, and even if she's not there, she'll have a member of her staff that'll help us get around and tell us where we need to go, where we don't need to go.
Right.
So I mean that's just fun stuff. I mean it's just and taking these kids and letting them see the Capitol, and for me is really exciting. Take them to the Supreme Court and
absolutely,
just to see
a tour of the White House. Yeah, that would be good. Who knows? You might get to meet Trump right there. Yeah, right there in the White House.
It could happen right there on the spot.
Right there on the spot.
I'm afraid he'd doge me and somehow it cost me some money.
Probably. Well, Senator Billy Garrett, as always, thank you so much for coming in this afternoon.
And it's my pleasure. And I love your new dog.
You love Penny, Princess
Yeah.
Penny, yes.
I missed your first one or your second one, but
Right.
miss this one.
Gracie,
Gracie. Yeah,
yes.
This one's going to be Gracie's right there.
Right.
But I know she's good comfort and company to you.
Oh, she's she's wide open. She's wide open. People say, where did she learn to be like this, Ann? I don't know. Maybe like Ann.
Well, she's my buddy. She came in and she licked me when I came in, and she
Yeah.
had to check me out, make sure I was all right. And
Right.
then once, like you said, once she checked me out, she was fine. She's been good ever since. So.
She has. She knows the rules. She's going to be co-host here any day very soon. Billy Garrett, thank you so much for coming and being on the show with me today. Again, give them your telephone number and we'll close it out.
Sounds good. 864-554-0963. Thank you very much, Ann.
All right. That's going to do it for us. Hope to see everybody over there at the Republican meeting that'll be starting shortly. And don't forget the budget meeting is also going on over at District 50. That's going to do it for us. Bye-bye, everybody.